Okay, hello everybody. We are going to be talking about the Vikings today. So I got my little horn cup here, you know, and we're going to talk about the Vikings. And a lot of people think when they think of the Vikings, they think of the guys with the cow horn hats here. And we're gonna take a look at, was that true? Was that something that they would look like? Is that something that they would be doing? So what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at some notes today together. So the Vikings were kind of big invaders, okay? And invasions and migrations challenged the political and cultural landscapes of Western Europe during the early Middle Ages. So people are moving around Europe because of the plague, because of Genghis Khan and the Mongols are coming in and attacking. Um, they are moving around, and that's gonna, when large people are moving around, that's going to cause stress on the places that they're going to. And one of the big things is a lot of people are going there to, look for safety and work. Well, if you're an invader, you're looking there to go and take over something and kind of bring bad intentions there. So while we're looking here, we're going to be thinking of these questions. Why did many Europeans fear the Vikings? Um, and that's the big one that I want you to think of. There are other invaders that happened in Europe at this time, but we're only going to focus on the Vikings this week. So the Vikings. There was basically a pretty big relative peace that was going on in Western Europe because of Charlemagne, the king. It did not last very long. And even before he died, invaders had begun going at the edge of the empire and coming in. Um, and the worst of these invaders were the Vikings. So where do they come from? The Vikings, they came from Northern Europe. They lived in Scandinavia. Their society was mostly rural and agricultural, and most worked as fishermen or farmers at this time. So one of the big things was they had very large food shortages. Through the sea that provided plenty of fish, but their soil was not fertile. It's very rocky, it's very cold, hard to grow things. So the farmers had trouble growing enough grain. So food shortages for the Vikings was a very common problem. So new sources. So Viking leaders looked for a new source of food and wealth. And they said, hey, look, we tried growing it. We tried doing it the nice way, and it's not working. So they decided that they're going to take what they need from others. And what they started doing was the Viking raids began. So we're going to take a look at those. So the Viking raids, the sailing skills, Vikings were superb. Shipbuilders and sailors, ships capable of withstanding heavy ocean waves, crews as many as 100. Their skills at navigation allowed crossing the great expanses of the ocean. Their first targets of the raids were England and northern France. Later, they began raiding places farther from their homeland. Even inland locations like Paris, Aachen were unsafe. And in a little time, people lived in fear and had no warnings that the Vikings were coming. They were fast-moving ships that could target quickly, and Vikings killed and captured defenders and took what they could find and sailed away. So basically, there was no war, there was no this. It would be a couple ships, the Vikings would unload, they'd attack. Most of the times, they're going to attack a weak village, and they would go in and they would attack and they'd take what they want and they'd get out. And they'd be able to do that. Okay, and these Vikings, they were fantastic at ships and building these ships that would last and would carry a lot of goods so that they can move from place to place quickly and then go back home and drop stuff off. And what was really cool about the Viking ships too is they were built so well that when they were deemed not well enough to be on the ocean anymore, they got retired from crossing the ocean. What they would do is they'd take the ship, they'd flip it over, okay, and then they'd prop that ship up, and then they have a house because the ship would kind of go and be their roof. The bottom of the ship would be their roof for their house. Now, what was their favorite targets? Among the favorite targets were monasteries. So monasteries where a bunch of monks lived, kind of priests, okay? that study and devote their whole lives for learning the Bible and learning about God. Monks were not warriors, and monasteries were easy to plunder. Monks did not fight; they would not fight. They had fine treasures, jeweled crosses, golden candlesticks, and they would steal from them. Vikings are not Christians, and they had no problem stealing the religious items. Now, not all Vikings who left Scandinavian raiders, some were explorers. One place settled by the Vikings was Iceland. They first arrived there at 700s. Viking society also thrived there for centuries, longer than in Europe. In 982, they went west. They explored Greenland, and 100 years later, Leif Erikson reached North America. He goes to North America here, and he's actually the first European to find it. So that is pretty incredible. So that is actually really incredible. Also, one of the things is Iceland was kind of the nicer land out of the two than Greenland. And when people had heard about Greenland and Iceland, which one are you going to go to? You're going to go to Greenland because Iceland sounds terrible. Well, they get to Greenland and it is just covered in glaciers and ice and awful. So they start thinking, man, if this is Greenland, Iceland's got to be 10 times worse. Here's a little trick the Vikings played just with the namings of things. So Normandy. Viking warriors also settled in northern France. They were led by a chief named Rollo. He attacked France many times. The king of France made a deal with Rollo to stop raids and defended Frankish lands against other Vikings. He gave them land. So they got so bad that the kings of France were like, this is so bad, we can't fight them anymore. It's easier to pay them than it is to fight them. The Romans did something like that too, if you remember. So Rollo accepted. The area became known as Normandy, and it was land of the northern men. Now, Mr. Bennett here had gone a couple years ago to Iceland. So it was in the middle of winter break, and we went there, and it was cold and it was right before January 1st. Well, Iceland, it's basically the same kind of temperature all year round. So it does get a little warmer here and there, but this water that we scuba dived in or snorkeled in, this right here is called the Continental Divide. This gap right here goes down very, very far, and these are the two tectonic plates. This one is Europe. This one is North America. It was freezing. It was so cold. When I got out, my beard here, I had a big beard. It started to freeze, and my hair was freezing. We went to beaches. We did everything you would do on a nice Caribbean island, but we did it in Iceland in the middle of December and January. But it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. I got to try a bunch of different stuff. I tried puffin. I tried whale. We got to see a huge fireworks display for New Year's. It was a lot of fun, and I really recommend it if you ever get to go. Then you're going to have this map. Now, this map is going to be important for tomorrow's assignment. There is a reading and a question about this map. Now, this map, what does it show? This map shows the places that the Vikings went to, the areas that they lived in. Okay, so you have this area here. This is where they really started. Okay, this Scandinavia, Norway, Finland. Okay, a little bit of Denmark here. Nowadays, Denmark. They would go from here, and they would go and they would raid and attack, raid and attack, raid and attack, raid and attack. Now, this area here in France, that's Normandy. This is a lot of the spots that they would attack. Iceland here, this is the spot that they discovered and kind of founded. And then they moved from Iceland to Greenland. They settled on this side because this side was a lot more harsh. This side actually had a little bit of land, but most of Greenland, if you know anything about it, it's just all ice. And they finally made their way to North America here. They are the first Europeans to do that. Now, the Vikings, when they knew about this land before Christopher Columbus, they just didn't tell anybody. They were pretty secretive about their land, and they figured that this was a tough terrain, and actually Native Americans beat them back. because it would be small groups of Vikings that would go here, and the Native Americans didn't want them there, so they actually kind of ran them off. And the Vikings just kept this area that if anything did go wrong, if anywhere they needed to go, they could go back here someday. Well, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for coming along and sharing here. I hope that you have learned something and can be a little bit more knowledgeable about the Vikings, okay? For today, what we would like you to do is write down here, what up YouTube, go ahead, give me a like and subscribe, but actually just leave the comment of something that you've learned, something you found interesting, and something you still want to know about. Well, okay, that's enough for today. Keep working on your module and stay safe, and your teachers, we all miss you guys.